The second session of Day 1 widened perspectives to include economic and community issues. After all, it was Ctbuh founder Lynn Beadle who taught us that the tall building must be integrated into the surrounding neighborhood and be economically feasible. In these trying economic times, these goals can be difficult to accomplish. Steve Watts looks at these issues from an even bigger perspective by examining the economic argument underpinning the question of whether sustainable and mixed-use tall buildings are viable.
My presentation really follows the theme of this, the core theme of this conference, which is the increasing focus on both economics and sustainability. And the two are inextricably linked, not always obviously and sometimes paradoxically, and I'm going to attempt to navigate a route through the fog using the Shard at London Bridge as an example that actually gets a lot of things right in both of those respects.
Watts described the Shard, also known as the London Bridge Tower. At over 300 meters, it will be the tallest building in the UK and one of the tallest in Europe. The tower is mixed use, containing residential, hotel, and office functions.
So, the Shard is iconic, it's tall, it ticks quite a few sustainability boxes, it's a very, very strong brand, but it's actually also incredibly economic too, and this is what always surprises people, particularly in London, who are used to high costs attached to buildings the higher they become. And I thought it would be useful just to quickly compare some of the key elements of the Shard, which is proceeding, with the Leadenhall building, which isn't proceeding at the moment. The Shard is much taller and much larger than the Leadenhall building, yet it sits right at the bottom of the cost benchmark. And why is that? Well, the basic reason is that tapering form creates a structure which is very simple, relatively simple, and cost-effective. So my hobby horse, and I have to leave you with one thing today, is that shape is equally important as height when it comes to cost.
The structural efficiencies from the Shard's form result in a 20% difference on a cost index scale between the two buildings. The shape of the tower also results in efficiency in facade when looking at the floor-to-wall ratio. In this comparison, it results in a 40% difference in the construction costs for these towers' facades. As a final note, Watts commented on the potential of mixed use, why it developed historically, and why it continues to make sense today and into the future.
One thing I think we may see is a developing typology in terms of tall building. Let's go back to the reason for them back in the 20s and 30s in Chicago. Clustering. There's a value to clustering. We need to create spaces of encounter, and there's a great value in that. If you take a building over its 30-year life cycle, 85% of the cost of a building is in salaries, in people.
The next presentation, from Dan Probst of Jones Lang LaSalle, noted a growing awareness of the importance of sustainable building performance among office tenants in recent years.
In answer to the question, what tenants want, the quick answer is that, the question is, do they really care about energy and sustainability and the performance of the buildings that they're leasing space in? The answer to that question is more and more every day. Companies have recognized that this is just good business. Caring about the performance of the buildings is good business. So it really gets back to now to the point where it doesn't matter if they buy into climate change or not. They're recognizing that this is good business for several reasons. One is that high-performance buildings designed to some of these new standards are just way more energy efficient. So they can reduce building operating expenses anywhere from 10 to 40% just by incorporating some of these key design concepts or by locating in buildings that are built to these standards. And in the current economic environment, clearly that's a key driver. So big opportunities to save money.
The most progress that can be made will be done by improving existing buildings, not through new construction. To highlight what can be done, Probst described one of his recent projects, greening the Empire State Building. Analysis showed 8 improvements that would have the greatest impact on the building, and these include refurbishing the windows, adding insulation behind the radiators, and implementing tenant energy management systems.
Again, for a 1930s building, and a building that where we're adding air conditioning capacity to cool areas that weren't cooled in the past, Overall, we're going to reduce energy use by 38% in the building. Very nice payback on the project, reducing carbon.
Garrett Miller then presented a case study on the development of the American Commerce Center in Philadelphia. The tower is planned to become the tallest building in the city at 460 meters, or 1,509 feet. This mixed-use project, which includes offices, hotel, and retail, will be deeply rooted in the urban fabric with transit connections and multiple levels of open public green spaces which are located on and above the ground plane.
This is just a picture of the urban room that's in the middle there. It provides almost over half an acre of space, entirely open to the public. You can sort of see the glass elevator there on the left that links everything in. That goes down to the concourse that pulls people directly up from the transportation nodes, from the sidewalk, from the plaza levels, from the retail. And again, we're trying to invite the public back into the project so that they can experience the building as well as the tenants.
It also implements many sustainable technologies and seeks a LEED Gold rating. Miller discusses some of the challenges faced in developing a project of this scale in today's market.
Now, one of the things that I was tasked to talk about today was, what are the challenges of developing a project like this? And the biggest one, obviously, especially for a mixed-use project today, is that there's financing disparities. I mean, we can make an argument of whether a capital market even exists for commercial real estate development. I think the answer to that right now is no. But with a project like this, and I think, especially with the office component, you can, move forward with the development by taking out as much of the risk of the development as possible. The way to do that is to obviously partner up with very high credit, large tenants. I think that the old, rules of 30, 40, or 50% pre-lease to get a building kicked off in this environment are well past us. We are probably looking at a 70, 80% plus pre-leasing requirement to kick off an office tower like this. The biggest challenge for us in this project would be financing of the hotel. There effectively is no market for hotel financing, but we are looking offshore and looking at alternative means. The challenge for the hotel is that it represents over 20% of the cost, but only about 5% of the income, mostly driven by the fact that ADRs and occupancy rates and RevPAR have just collapsed in the Mid-Atlantic region.
Through the tenant research that Jones Lang LaSalle has conducted, to what degree are tenants demanding that they be in a LEED certified building or commercial interior?
We're not seeing a lot of demand yet for LEED certification on behalf of tenants, but it is happening. The U.S. government is definitely showing a preference, the GSA, toward a space that is LEED certified. We've seen some big companies, Goldman Sachs, Shell Oil, Fireman's Fund, who are saying they will not lease space in environmentally friendly buildings. And then the question always is, well, how is that measured? How do they, what's the benchmark? And in some cases, lacking any other, they're saying, at least LEED Silver, for instance.
To what extent is it the bankers, the financiers, who, to what extent do they understand the economic blueprint for the super tall buildings and stand in the way of the projects becoming realized? How much are they the gatekeepers of projects?
I think historically they haven't been, but I think an increasing feature is that they will be. The risk profiles these days are very much different to what they were 5 years ago. And no matter what institution you talk about, whether it's a bank or a sovereign wealth fund or whatever, they look very keenly at the risks of each project. And obviously tall buildings, by their very nature, involve more risks than their lower counterparts. So I think that will become an increasing feature where the need to convince and help funders understand the business case,
How do you think that the building that you're proposing actually maintains the profile of the city in terms of its urban scale?
In terms of how it respects the scale, well, different parts of the building, for example, the height of the entrance, the lobby to the hotel, that sort of reflects back and is sort of modeled after the historical colonial scale. The scale of the hotel bridge is sort of modeled after the sort of that mid-rise scale, sort of right around the city hall type height. And then the city's already sort of broken through into the super tall buildings. Comcast Center is 975 feet. Liberty One is at 960 feet. Liberty Two is 940 feet. You have Mellon Bank Center 900 feet. So we're not the first ones there. We are the first ones sort of breaking through the 1,000-foot height barrier. But I think it's just sort of part of the evolution of a city. The scales will always evolve and always change. A lot of that's dictated by technology.